Today, we're diving into a really powerful idea, one that connects the smallest parts of your life to the biggest forces in the world. Seriously, once you see these connections, you kind of can't unsee them. Let's get right into it.
So let's just kick things off with a question that seems, well, pretty personal. Who does the cooking in your house? Who does the cleaning? Is that just a private family thing, or could it actually be something more? Stick with me, because the answer might just surprise you.
And here it is, the idea that ties it all together. The personal is political. This phrase came out of the feminist movements back in the 1960s and 70s. But listen, it's not just some old slogan. It's a whole new lens for looking at the world, one that reveals connections hiding in plain sight. So what on earth does it actually mean?
Okay, let's break this down. How does a personal feeling, a private struggle, get transformed into a full-blown political issue? It all comes down to seeing the pattern.
Here's the deal in a nutshell. This idea suggests that a lot of our private struggles, the stuff we think is just our problem or maybe even our fault, are actually echoes of much bigger social patterns. And when we say political, we're not just talking about elections or governments. Politics is really about power, and power dynamics are everywhere. This is pretty much how it works. It starts with one person's problem. Let's say a woman feels like it's not fair that she does all the housework. Then she starts talking to her friends, and they feel the same way. And then she realizes, wait a second, millions of women feel this way. All of a sudden, it's not just my problem anymore, it's become our pattern. And that pattern points directly to a political structure, those deep societal beliefs about what men and women are supposed to do. Okay, so that's the theory, right? But the real power of this idea, where it really clicks, is when we start applying it to the world around us. So let's look at some real-world examples, focusing on situations that might feel pretty familiar, especially for young people in India. Take this super common scenario. In a family, a daughter is asked to help in the kitchen while her brother is, told to go play outside. Now, on the surface, that's just one family's decision. It's personal. But when we zoom out and see this happening in thousands or millions of families, it starts to reveal a much wider political reality about how our society assigns different roles and expectations to men and women. Or let's think about education. Imagine a family has to make a really tough financial choice, and they decide to invest more in their son's schooling than their daughter's. That's a deeply personal decision, right? But it's also directly shaped by these larger social and economic structures that have, for a very long time, valued a man's career potential more than a woman's. See the connection? And what about safety? A parent telling their daughter she can't stay out late just feels like a personal rule, something to protect her. But why does that rule even need to exist? And why is it so often applied differently to her brother? It's a personal solution to a much larger political failure, the societal problem of harassment and the fact that public spaces often aren't safe enough for women. In this lens, it's not just about gender, not at all. Imagine a student being left out by their classmates simply because of their caste. That personal, painful experience of exclusion isn't random. It's a direct echo of a centuries-old political system of caste hierarchy. The personal pain is being fueled by a political structure. You can even apply this to something as, normal as a power cut. The personal frustration of not being able to study for an exam because the lights went out, well, that isn't just bad luck. It's actually the result of big-picture political decisions about where to invest money in infrastructure and how to distribute resources. Your personal struggle is tied directly to public policy. So you might be thinking, okay, I see the connections, but so what? Well, seeing these connections isn't just some interesting little thought exercise. It is a powerful tool for change, because realizing that your problem is also a pattern, well, that's the very first step toward turning a personal complaint into a political movement. And this idea has an incredible history. It started with feminists in the 70s who got together in these things called consciousness-raising groups. They would literally just share their personal stories and start to see the patterns. Then disability rights activists used it to brilliantly argue that a person isn't disabled by their body, but by a society that builds stairs instead of ramps. And today, we see it fueling huge movements for LGBTQ+ rights and environmental justice. And this is why it's so incredibly empowering. The moment you realize you're not alone, it just shatters that feeling of isolation. It shifts the entire conversation from, what's wrong with me, to, wait, what's wrong with the system? And that shift, right there, from personal blame to systemic analysis, that is the engine of all social change. Of course, it's really important to remember that this is a lens, not some strict rule that explains everything. Our individual agency, our power to make our own choices, that absolutely still matters. The key is just to look for the patterns, to ask yourself when a personal problem might be pointing to something much, much bigger. So, how can you start using this lens in your own life? Let's bring it home and look at how this idea applies to the challenges and pressures a lot of us face today. Okay, think about exam stress. Is it just your anxiety? Or is it maybe also a symptom of an education system and a society that defines success in a really narrow way? Or what about mental health? When so many young people are feeling anxious, could that be a shared personal response to larger political issues like economic uncertainty? This lens just helps us ask bigger and, frankly, better questions.
So, if there's one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this. Understanding that your personal experiences don't just happen in a bubble is the absolute first step toward changing the world. It's that moment of realization that you have the power to question and maybe even challenge the very structures that shape our lives.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Take a look at your own life, the challenges you face, the things you see around you. What seemingly personal problem might actually be a clue to a much larger political pattern? Think about it. The answer could be the start of something really big.